you know, and I would say to many of you out there, I don't know about you, but this feels like the term that time forgot. I mean, it's just gone on forever. But I am reliably informed it's only 6 more alarms away, which is nice, you know, to think about. So we're very grateful, Andrew and I, because I know this is a
If
huge.
you if you work in Aberdeenshire, Helena, if you work in Aberdeenshire, it's one more sleep. They stop tomorrow.
No, not fair. Read your crowd, read your card, Martin. There's people there. That's not good. That's not good.
Sorry, I'm just speaking from the fact I've got two excited teenagers that have only got one sleep until they can
One
sleep
more
in.
alarm.
One
We
more.
are envious. Well, whether you've 1 or 6, you're here, and we're very, very grateful. It's been an amazing week. We are delighted that Andrew, who is, I would say, an incredibly inspiring teacher, one of these teachers that has taught me so much, not least in his yes and. You know, when you go to Andrew and you say, "What about this, Andrew?" And he goes, "Yes, and let's do something else." So when we approached him and said, "Andrew, we'd love you to provocate, to throw something out there to the crowd and to the cloud, and for you to share a vision, which we really hope will spark something for you." So very much like the work that we did with Curio, with Chris Davey from Daydream Believers on Tuesday, this is just a kind of a how, and it's moving us a little bit away from the conversations about the what and the why. So if all this does is make you think and make you question, then we're doing what makes us uniquely human. We're being curious and we're not just taking things for granted. So, Andrew, I'm going to pass over to you. This is a great story and I'm excited about you sharing it. Please feel free in the chat to put down any comments or anything that sparks for you. I'll try and keep an eye on them. And let's just see what your vision of the future holds for us. And Andrew, just before you start, if you do know the lottery numbers coming up at the weekend, let me know when everybody leaves. So apart from the lottery, off you go.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Helena. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to press the button and share my screen there with my slides. So if I've not met you before, my name's Andrew Hay. I'm the Principal Teacher of Technologies at New Battle High School, which is in Midlothian. We are a digital centre of excellence. So we do try and lead the way with digital and very much share as much as possible with everyone else. So this was a great opportunity to think about what's the potential of AI and how can we move forward. So if I do get this right, or Andrew Hill of the future in 2028 if someone's watching this then and it's like, damn, you got it right, like by all means, tell me that I got it right in the future. That would be amazing. But I don't have the lottery numbers. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here myself right now. So what I've got first is we are very much at the beginning of the most transformative revolution our planet has ever seen. And that's a statement that gets used a lot, whether it's the invention of the wheel, the industrial age, the internet. But I think everyone is very much unanimous that the impact that AI is going to have is going to be massive. And the talks all this week, and surely if you're in on this call as well, you're on the boat or very much aware that this is a chance that it could make a massive difference to all of us. And the question that I've got today is what if we get it right? And I guess the caveat that I'll put here is I totally understand the Education Scotland stance and supporting all local authorities, but the autonomy that local authorities have as well. And we are at a stage where there is differences across Scotland and across the world of how AI is getting used in different ways. So everything that I'm focused on here, I'm going to try and stay as much as possible. There's only a couple of negative bits, but of the focus of if we get it right, this is what it could be if we get it right. The other quote that I got, and purely by chance, because when I got asked to do this, I got asked, what's it going to look like in 2028 specifically? And the quote that you'll have all heard before is, you can't really know where you're going until you know where you've been. It's a famous quote or versions of it. And when I looked up the author of that quote, and it's Maya Angelou, you can see it was 1928. And I thought that was very topical, that it's 100 years later that I'm predicting for that quote of of where we'll be. So if you'll indulge me a little bit, I'm just going to look very briefly at sort of where we are and where we've been to then move things forward. And I think importantly, it's worth recognising the challenges that's happening in Scottish education. And these will not be a surprise to anyone at all, of whether it's the budget cuts and budget constraints that everybody is working under at the moment, teacher numbers in some specific secondary subjects, or if it's teacher numbers, depending where you are geographically in Scotland, is a massive challenge for all of us. Teacher wellbeing, and there was an article just in Tests the other week about the impact in Scotland for teacher wellbeing, the number of teachers that have been off with stress, or that's been listed as the reason. So I think we'll have to realise and take that into consideration. And then the one size fits all approach, and I'm totally on board with get it right for every child and teachers differentiate and supporting, but there is an expectation where every school is having to take on a lot now, where in the past there was a lot more provision to support with learners that had a wide range of other needs or requirements that we now have to fit in with in our school setting. So with all of that in mind, what's the positive? And I guess it's probably worth me highlighting on my slides. I've put my prompts. It's a lot of AI images, and I've done that deliberately, but I've put my prompts so you can see exactly what I used for my prompts. And you can see here it's, but what if we get it right? And I think it's really interesting. You can see the smiles on everyone's face here and the happiness of everybody on board is what we want. And that's one of my goals in life, is always happiness is the most important thing. So where are we now to get to the point of that happiness? And I got this, a cowboy educator, and I thought this was such a good AI image. And the more you look at it, the more you'll notice little things that is quite amusing, like the cactus pencil pot, I think is a great idea to implement. But how confident are you with AI or people in your setting, whether it's high school, primary school? What is happening in your school or the organisation you're with to support with AI at the moment? What's happening wider than that? If it's the local authority, is there a direction? Is there a statement? Is there tools that's been implemented? And nationally, what's happening? And I've put those all as questions because I didn't want to answer them for individuals. I wanted you to really think about, where are you in this journey? Where's your group of teachers or colleagues or the wider body that you're in? What's happening with you? And I'd say just pause for a second and have a think about that. And think about, are you where you think you should be? There's lots of discussions about AI and lots of different meetings or forums at the minute discussing where we need to be. SQA are currently reviewing their current stance on AI. So I think it's a good time to consider that and consider, are we all moving together in this, or are we splintering, and is it a bit cowboy territory of we've got some people doing some things, some people's doing others? And getting back to the 2028 goal, that's where the rest of my presentation is focusing on everybody on the same journey, on the same bus, and us all going in the same direction. It's by no means looking at small pockets, it's looking at holistically. So where can we go now to get support? If you're like, Andrew, you've just scared me and I feel like I'm miles behind, and I'd highlight the Daydream Believers stuff, and the Gen AI Education Exploration Hub is a fantastic resource to get current and updated information on AI to support you in your classroom or your setting when you are looking at AI, dabbling, or want some information. Local authorities are starting to get some information, but this is where you can get a wide stream of information and lots of different AI tools or for applications if you're using it in an educational setting. So I'd really encourage you to have a look if you haven't already on there. There's a lot, but it's all digestible and easy to read, as you can see in the little clip here, that it's chunked quite nicely for it to be broken down. And it's where you can point your colleagues as well to this resource if they're saying, well, I've heard about Gen AI or I've heard about tools, I'm not really sure where to start or what to go. I'd say point them pointing them towards this resource as a definite option to support them in their AI journey and for where we're trying to get to for the future. If my slide will keep going. Come on. So what about 2020 and what are the predictions there that I've made based on knowledge, experience? I guess it's worth saying I've been in a lot of different conversations and a lot of different forums talking about AI. New Battle is very much a leader in some ways of the different AI work that we're doing. So a lot of that's informed us. And then ever since Elena kindly asked me, can you please do this talk, I've very much been looking out of what are other people saying, what are other people doing, to get as much information to inform this as accurate as I can, even though it's very much crystal ball and a guesswork. So I want to start with the start of your day as a professional in 2020, and we're just going to work through the day of what I think it's going to look like. And I specifically chose the language of start of your day because I totally understand for some people the start of their day might be when they're having their coffee in their house and they're just looking at their laptop and looking at their phone and working out what's happening. Others, it might be whilst you're driving on a commute to your school and you're starting to think about where do I need to go. And then for some, it's when you get to the school building because you've just, like I, dropped off your children and this is the first moment you've had to think, right, okay, school hat on, what's going. And the first thing I think is going to be mainstay by 2020 is AI teacher buddy. And what I mean by this is a specific language model for the context that we are in, because a lot of the tools currently are large language models where you need to point it towards a Scotland context, and it may or may not know that context depending on how specific you drill down to get the information. And what I'm expecting there is a language model that's secure and a language model that is connected to your school data. And I'll go back and forth and into that in more and more detail. But what I mean by that is specifically that it's got access to things like your calendar in this scenario. And you can see, you know, my example here of you might just be like, what's on my schedule today? What am I needed to do? And that's where the teacher buddy idea is very much that it's not replacing you, it's something that can keep you right. So you might say, okay, what classes have I still got to plan for today? What do I still need to get organised? What's on my to-do list? What did I not get finished yesterday that's carried over to today that I need to pick up? Or what's urgent and what's not as urgent? And my thought there, whether it's a verbal and like Alexa speaking to you, or whether it's a computer-based thing, is that you can go back and forth and talk to it and say, well, actually, no, that's not a priority for me today. What should I tackle next? And it could reorganize, redistribute what's on your to-do list or the activities that you need to do. And I think that is a way to start your day and confirm, because as we all know, in schools, it's very easy for something to fly past the window, and that becomes the most important thing that you need to deal with at that point. But in reality, it's not the most important thing, and there's other things that you need to stop and think and consider about. And we've all been there when you go, sugar, I meant to do that this morning, but I got distracted with this, that, or the next thing. So I think having that information, and that's where all the way to, you know, an AI model that knows about the cover in the school, so that if you've got a cover class, it can say, well, you were planning to do this period 2, Andrew, but actually we're going to have to jiggle that about because now you're covering this class. And that's the sort of AI buddy that I could see very much being in place, looking at the current AI bots that are out there, or AI tools to help you organize your life and your routine. Some of the examples that I put on this slide was just to give you an idea of what it could look like, and specifically to contextualize it to now. And I say now, but I think they're phasing out from my experience. The teacher planner was a staple when I started teaching, and I'm not going to say how many years ago that was. And, you know, every teacher would get a teacher planner at the start of the academic session, and that was, you carried it everywhere with you. There are some staff in my school that still use like physical paper teacher planners, but very much are gone. And it's where, you know, that would be your be all and end all of everything. But the AI buddy, I think, whether it's saying you need to do this marking, whether it's saying, oh, you've done that, you need to now update the trackers, whether it's pointing towards there's a news article today on BBC News, and you're going to be teaching this topic, period 5, Andrew. There's a nice connection there. And that's the sort of thing that totally, if you're sat reading your newspaper first thing in the morning, you might make that connection yourself, but not everyone has the time to see those connections. And it's always a pain when you get to a lesson and you've taught it, and then at lunchtime you see something, damn, that would have been really good for that lesson. And you can still mention it, but it's not got the same impact. So you can see other simple things of get this resource ready for a class, follow up with something, or you need to arrange a meeting, or you have a meeting with someone, or if you just need to get support materials or support a colleague with something that it could highlight and say, this is going on, this is happening, this is what you need to do. So once you've started your day, then you're going to go to your first lesson. And again, remember, this is the dream of everything working well and going well. And I wanted to put in here, and it took me a few tries to get a good AI image here of, I genuinely mean this. I think teaching is one of the hardest jobs, because whether you've got 20 or 30 young people in front of you, every day is different. They're coming with different needs, requirements, and who knows what they're coming into your class having experienced out with your class. And you're spinning those plates, and there's lots of plates to be spun. And on top of that, you have the other considerations of, are you worried about their well-being and just looking after, building up confidence, making sure that they're inspired or enthused in the subject that you're trying to teach them, so you might ignite a passion for them moving forward. There's the attainment agenda, which I think nobody needs pointed at to think about the spinning the plates of driving up attainment in schools. And then there's the management of the curriculum, and what have I got through today? What do I need to get through tomorrow? How can I get everything complete? And that's where I think one of the things with teaching is you've got so many different things you have to keep in your head. There's so many different steps that you need to think, right, I need to remember this, or there's an assembly then, or that pupil needs to be sent out of my class then. And in the classroom, again, the idea of the AI buddy, but an AI that can support with keeping that stuff together. And whether that's on the teacher's screen, that you can see that, so that it can make the connections and support you doing it. And specifically, I'd highlight here 2028 and in the future, I am not expecting AI to be replacing teachers. I think the human element is incredibly important, and the AI is a tool to support here. So I don't want anyone going away thinking 2020 it's AI teachers, because they'll be able to spin all those plates. I think there's far more nuances to teaching than that. So with that in the class, I'd expect by 2028 things like real-time analysis. How are the pupils performing? And there's tools already that can do this type of thing, whether it's a Microsoft form that tells you that Andrew took 4 minutes and 32 seconds to complete it. You know, we can get that data at the moment, but what you need is real-time analysis of, hold on a minute, Andrew's working a wee bit slower today. Maybe I need a wee check in there. And that could just flag up subtly for the teacher that then, yes, you could follow up at the time, or the teacher could make the decision, actually, I know that because there's something else happened, so I'm just going to give Andrew space, and I'm not going to be on top of him, so that it can inform the teacher to do that. Next thing is the I wish I had, of I wish I'd done this, or I wish I'd done that. And that's where it's thinking about, how are we getting information of what we could do and the different routes that we can go down. One of the things that we're looking at New Battle for our next in-service day is a little session about questioning, and specifically about planning questioning and what questions you can use. And it's one of those things of, totally you can get AI write questions for you right now, but in a lesson you want almost the options presented for you, that then you could say, actually, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole because the class are engaged and that's going to work down. So I view it as a tool that might actually just open up and say, well, you can make this connection, or you can go down that route based on the AI knowing your curriculum, knowing your content, knowing your timelines, knowing where you are wanting the learning to go. And I guess all of this is underpinned by the teacher being data informed with the decisions they are making, because we get so much data as class teachers. And I think it doesn't get noted enough how good teachers are at remembering. When you can say to a teacher, okay, can you name that pupil? And they have a lot of first year classes and they can name every single one of them by September. Or whether it's they remember exactly who has a toilet pass, who has an early pass, or who needs to go out for medicine. And it's all of this information. And I think what we want to look at is how can teachers be informed to collate and remember all the data that they have, because it might be that you say, well, actually, the topic we're covering just now relies on a topic that we covered back in S2 for this S4 Andrew, and actually back in S2, Andrew didn't do fantastic in that topic. So we need to make sure that we can get it so that it's flagged for the teacher and they can see that. Other tools, and this is where I'm looking at like a classroom buddy by 2028, is things like I want to make a quick note on something, or I want to investigate something further. And that's where it might just be the teacher being like a quick note. And again, this would be like a teacher planner and you could write something down, but I'm looking at it as, I could be doing a loop of my classroom, go over my computer and just be like, I just want to investigate. How is Andrew's performance happening now compared with 2 weeks ago? Because I feel there's a slight difference there. And the AI could just be like, oh, let's look at the time, let's look at the effort, let's look at the hand-in rate, the marks that he's getting, and chuck back and say, brilliant, here you go. That's what that's the information that you're getting of he's doing really well, or actually, no, there is a difference there. And then the last one, which I knew might be a wee bit controversial for some people, but I think it's important, especially thinking of the GTCS standards of observation feedback. And what I mean by this specifically is the number of times teachers get observed in reality for the vast majority of schools is a very, very low percentage of how much time the class teachers are teaching. And unanimously, when you speak to teachers, what they say is when I get good quality feedback, it has a positive impact on learning and teaching. And there's academic studies that back that up. And that's where I could see very, very much by 2028, whether it's audio, whether it's a camera, being able to get observation feedback. And it might say, well, actually, Andrew, when you were asking your questions, you focused too much on one area, or you got stuck on one area of the room. And that's where it's not to say it's good or bad. And specifically, I'm not saying an AI tool to make decisions on teacher performance. What I'm saying is give feedback on observational data. So it could just be like, actually, today, Andrew, you got trapped at the front left corner of your room a fair bit. And I might just ignore that and say, yeah, I know, because I was dealing with a student that needed extra support there. Or it could be something that you say, well, hold on a minute. I never realized that. I need to consider that and I need to think about that. And it's where I think whether you're a new teacher coming into the profession or you're a teacher that's been in a bit longer, everyone knows it's habits and routines. And it's very easy to fall into a habit that is not one that you necessarily want in your practice, that then this could support and could very much get us to help us on our journey to say, well, this is what we want it to look like. The next part of your day, I think, is non-contact time, because and I was going to make a cheeky statement about the Scottish Government promise to reduce contact time here as well. So I'm sure by 2028, the agreement will have happened and the contact time would be reduced there. So how's that going to look? And that's where my expectation here, and whether it's the AI buddy or whether it's a slightly different tool, would be a local or small scale language model specific for the school. And by 2028, it's going to have to be secure, but secure that it's on a network, possibly in a school or in an authority. And at this point, I'd really see it having the school specific data. And I mean a lot by that. And I think whether it's learner profiles, attainment data, pastoral data. I want the dream would be that it's got the connections of everything, because we have so much data in schools and we have so much data from primary to secondary, and there's so much data loss because it's not just transferred or easily transferable. And it's where that data, if we can capture, and if I can get an AI model, then I could be saying, right, I'm planning this lesson. What do I need to consider? And that's where the AI model might turn back and say, well, actually, Andrew, if you're teaching this concept in computer science, the learner actually in maths 2 months ago was struggling with this element. So you might want to keep that in mind, because then they might struggle when you are trying to teach it. So you might want to think about how you could scaffold that or support that learner or that group of learners. So the key bullet points there, I think it has to have the specific school context, and this would be tied in with improvement plans and for the school, and obviously authority in the NIF data. I think it has to have the data, not just a general language model, because at the moment people are going to any AI tool, and I'm not going to name them, but they're putting in and they're thinking, right, data security, I can't put in the pupil's name, so I've got a pupil who is 12, has a reading age of 8, and they're going down that way. And it's like, it's great, but we've generalized it then, and we're not looking at our school context. So I think the important thing is going to be actually getting tools that understand the context and the users that we are trying to support, as opposed to a generic person that is being generalized. Other things I think tied in with this, and you could argue this is during the lesson as well, as non-contact time is learning and teaching, and it's where I think there's massive scope linked in with how good is our school for us to really look at how can an AI support with that. So whether it's making pedagogical links between curricular areas and saying, well, actually how they're teaching this concept in maths will overlap in science. So it's maybe worth thinking that connection's there. And I totally understand that can happen right now. You just need to get the teachers together and have that conversation. But as soon as you've got staffing changes, is that lost? Is it transferred over? Is it where we can get better connections identified based on the data that we've got of all our plans? I think for professional data, it's worth professional data, sorry, that's because I'm reading the comments at the same time. The professional inquiries, I think it opens up a lot of scope there to help staff narrow down where do they need to focus and what do they need to consider when they're looking. And that's where, are we identifying the easy, low hanging fruit for inquiries, or are we actually looking at real nitty-gritty problems? And I think most people's experience would say some staff do that, some staff do the low hanging, some do narrow. So I think there's very much scope with the data and the language model looking at that. I think teachers being able to ask questions like, how can I improve on this? And I think that's partly CPD and partly a sustainable model where in schools staff can access that to say, I want to fix this, or what can you suggest, based on the professional reading that we're doing as a school, for example. The analysis I've talked about already for connecting the data there. Marking and feedback, I deliberately put stars on these because I'm very conscious that a lot of people are saying, okay, there's tools like Brisk that might mark something for me. And I'm like, that's great, but the teacher still needs to know that data. The teacher still needs to know their learners and needs to know that feedback. So I understand staff saying, that's going to save me time, which you said staff wellbeing, Andrew, hey, so that needs to tie in there. But I think it's really important that the marking and the feedback has to be linked back to the teacher's non-contact time. Are they going through? Are they reviewing it? What's the action points from it? And it's where I'm very conscious. You get fantastic. There's lots of fantastic teachers out there. There's also teachers that can, at times, for loads of reasons, not be running their best and can fall in bad habits. And I think that's where the AI tool in 2028 has to challenge teachers. And I would have to say, right, are you making a decision there, Andrew, or are you taking the easy way out to create a lesson plan here, or whatever you're asking it to do? And another one I think is tracking and monitoring. And specifically, I think there's real scope for support with interventions because we have so much data. Insight's fantastic. You know, we talk about our mid-60 or the top and bottom 20. We talk about the additional support needs learners has. We talk about the 5-at data. How are they doing in all their subjects? And I think having those connections and then an AI model being able to know your learners and be able to say, well, actually, Andrew, this is who you need to target here because we can have a big impact, which will have a bigger impact long term. The next bit, I think, is we're never going to get rid of meetings. So I'm not expecting AI to save the day on collegiate activity time or department meetings or anything like that. But there, I guess, I think by 2028, there's real scope to use AI for more personalization because we've all been at a CPD event where everyone's getting treated with the same broad brush, and you've got experienced teachers. I've been told this is the same as 10 years ago, and then you've got new teachers. This is amazing. And I think the AI tools, much like in the classroom for the differentiation that people are using, I think we really need to look at CPD and how are we using it to support and differentiate for staff, and whether that is AI bots to have those conversations with challenges, whether it's AIs to support to identify where staff are on their journey for their CPD. I think that is key. And then the other one, we've all been in the CPD event where the person leading it says, you know, I'm a science teacher, so my examples are all science. And that's great, that's brilliant. But everyone always has somebody in the room that says, well, I want an example for me. And I think AI in real time will be able to say, okay, here's an example in your context. Here's an example. Much like already AI can translate in real time, I'm expecting it to be able to say, well, here's an example within a different context to support teachers in different ways. I thought I'd add in a little bit about leadership, knowing that there'll be class teachers up listening into this. And that's where my thought for leadership in AI by 2028 is one, administration tasks. There's so many things, whether it's report writing, attainment analysis, that there's different tools such as AI, and not all language models are ideal or best at different tools, but I think it's really refining those tools, and I think there's real scope there to get standardization there. Insight is a fantastic tool used across everywhere. What would Insight look like if it had an AI tool that then everybody could use to support with the attainment analysis? How would that help to close the attainment gap and drive attainment up for us? So I think definitely there's scope there, and the benefit of that is then giving more time for leaders to make decisions. And that's where I'm not saying the AI model's making those decisions. Yeah, it might help write the report, but at the end of the day, the leader's the leader, and they should be making those decisions. So this could just be a classroom teacher that's leading learning in their classroom, but then it's giving more time for you to go, okay, well, this is a decision I'm going to make based on the information I have. And it gives more time for interventions. It gives us time to support the learners in front of us. And to me, you came into teaching, why? To teach young people. So let's get more time to do that. You've made it to the end of the day, which is great. And we all know it's a busy time of year, and the run up to the SK for the secondary partners. And I think the important thing here would be to highlight is the switching off and AI supporting that work-life balance. And I think when you're leaving the day, quite often staff are like, right, I need to make a note, I need to do this, that, and the next thing tomorrow. And I think for AI models, and as well thinking of the sustainability, the environmental impact, there's real scope to consider. Do AI models have to run tasks at that time? Yeah, totally. If you need something right there and then. Is it where then you could be like, right, I'm just going to leave the AI model. I've asked it to do X, Y, and Z for me. I'm going to go home, enjoy my evening. And then when I come in tomorrow morning, it's done and dusted and ready for me. And that's where I could see AI models really helping out with tasks like that you could say, can you just get that? Now, it might be a first draft. I am not expecting AI to write every single lesson plan, because I think that is a massive backward step. But I think there's real scope to say, well, what jobs are you doing at home that actually could be moved over when it's technically out of your working hours. And hopefully, just like my AI gentleman here, we'll all be smiling really happy in 2028 as we leave the school building, not because we don't want to be in the school building, but because we're enjoying and loving our jobs. I was conscious I wanted to have some time for questions, but I know there's a lot of predictions here. And one of the things that I'm of an age of is remembering a BBC TV show called Tomorrow's World. And I remember sitting with my family watching that show, and it was always predictions of what's going to happen, what technology developments there's going to be. And clearly it had an impact with me now being principal teacher of technologies, that show, and the fact that I remember it. Now, I think it's 2011 off the top of my head. This graphic was produced cheekily by BBC International, so you couldn't get it in the UK, which was a wee bit frustrating. But it was Tomorrow's World predictions, and you can see the start date and then the dates going on, and we are actually at the point where we're through some of this, and some of this has happened, some of it has not happened. And what I thought would be really interesting as part of my thinking of doing this would be to say, right, okay, we've got those world predictions, what's the predictions for AI? So I will post this up online because I know it's a wee bit small, but I had lots of predictions, and I've got most likely to least likely on here to try and get a feeling for what we think was going to happen or not happen based on the likelihood or not. So you can see most likely is on the left, least likely is on the right, and I've committed to a timeline here. So maybe, like Helena said at the start, this will be lottery numbers and we can just tick off stuff. But personalized learning, automated administrative tasks by 2028, I think is realistic. Personalized learning, some people would argue it's there already, but remember what I said earlier, we're looking at mainstream here. We're not looking at just being odd schools. The virtual tutors and assistants, again, that's actually supporting students for subjects in our courses. I know there are some examples out there of people that have made small AI bots, but by no means are they mainstay or holistic. And that's where, again, if you're of an age, you'll remember Education Scotland and the Higher Still materials that were produced that were fantastic. And that's where, imagine if we had something like that to support that the AI bot was trained on the same data, that everyone's happy, that's been QC'd and checked by everybody. So we're confident that it can support learners. And then other things is AI being able to really recognize emotions, I think is getting a wee bit less likely, but 2030, predictive analytics in terms of schoolworks and what is going to happen. And that's where that would be really interesting, carrying between primary school to high school, and what interventions do we need to actually do in P6 that are going to have an impact in S4 that everyone's on the same page of, and not just having to guess this is where we need to get learners. The AI-driven curriculum design, I think, is a big one in the sense of how can we get our curriculums really refined to a point where it's connecting the dots massively. So I know the learners I had this year in primary 3 done the Egyptians, and they engaged really well with pyramids. So now when I'm teaching structures, I can pull that thread. The augmented reality and VR is something that I know some people are already working on, but I think there's real scope for supporting learners. And when we're looking at authorities doing digital offerings and aligned curriculums, I think there's real scope there. Ethical AI policies, and what I meant there is really thinking about the ethical issues in school and the use. And it's where I think we're getting a lot of use case policies, but are we generating and just spamming that generate button until we get something good, when actually it's not going to produce what we want at this time? The AI and special education, there are examples of this getting used, but I think it's by 2034, it'll just be mainstay of it's a massive support and embedded in practice fully. The enhanced extracurricular activities, I think some people might be like, well, I'm using it already to support my Dungeons and Dragons group. But again, how are we using it for all? How are we using it to flag or to signpost and get pupils to these extracurricular activities that are fantastic that teachers are offering? I think the global collaboration and being able to make the connections globally, and the AI being able to support with connections there is key, because there's some teachers that are great at making connections and pulling people together across the planet, but we really need support for everybody to get that help and move learning and teaching forward globally. The AI-driven student wellbeing programs of how is AI supported and how are we teaching students to be supported for the wellbeing and their relationship with technology and wider wellbeing. And you can see I'm getting less and less likely of, is it going to happen? And then the AI-powered career counselling is an interesting one, because I could see some people saying, is that like Minority Report or something, Andrew? But I think it's an interesting one of, would it open doors that you didn't know? I know of so many more jobs now that I'm like, man, if I knew at school, would I have done that? Quite possibly. AI and teacher training, and specifically there, I'm not just meaning, like demonstrated, I'm meaning like massive AI support in and it being an embedded program. And you can see how far along it's the less likely, but it's an interesting way to think, would that support for people doing postgrads of giving more flexibility to it, as opposed to the current model. AI integration, smart classrooms, and I've sort of hinted on bits of that, but that's what I'm thinking. Imagine a classroom where we have all of this integration, where it's gathering data for you and the teacher's not having to get that data, and it's there already, where learners can just jump and access. Why do we not have classrooms with just a cooking room and home economics with iPads for recipes just there all the time, as an example? And then AI-driven global education programs. And what I mean by that one is very much how can we get a global movement to move AI forward, and not just schools, local authorities, or countries moving in different directions. So that is my predictions. And I think a lot of people say that change is coming, but I think it's already here. I think, we started with learners using AI in 2021, and that shows you that it's a long way now. I think the number of schools that are using it now is extremely high, I think, teachers. So I think we need to embrace it, we need to drive it, and we all, as practitioners, have to have our voice to control the direction that AI goes as we move in the future. So thank you so much for joining my session. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you've enjoyed it. By all means, if you're wanting to get in touch with me, I've put my email there, and I'm on the social medias if people want to get in touch that way. And I can't see because I've put my computer on full screen, but I think we've got a couple minutes for questions, unless I get told off by anyone else. And I hope you've enjoyed that.
There's lovely comments coming in, Andrew, and I think just please feel free to pop a comment in. We have another 2 minutes, but we might, I don't know if there's another one, might have a little bit of time after that. But wow, Andrew, I had my camera off, but I was just smiling at you and nodding the whole time. I think you took us through a really interesting provocation. I think it was really. You spoke both as a future thinker, but also a realist. And I think what struck me so much was you understand everything about what it means to be like a teacher, but you genuinely came across as someone who cares deeply about the future and our young people, as well as, looking at what can happen and how we can make this work. And I think if you're out there at the minute and we're going to lose you in a minute or so and you have to pop off, I would just suggest one thing. No one is born behind the wheel of a car. We mentioned this in Chris's talk. You get in, you start, stalling, and you're not sure what gear. And it's the same with AI. Just find one tool. You go to our site and you can pick a tool, play with it, explore it. Even if it's just asking it, what can I do with the ingredients in my fridge? Tell me what I can have for tea. I think that what is, happening is that some people feel very overwhelmed by where we're going and somewhat scared. And the temptation is to, dig down and pretend this will blow over. It's not going to happen. So be gentle with yourselves. If you haven't used it before, try it, play with it. And play is a lovely word, because in the play you will learn. And as you start to play with one tool, and you might think, I'll progress to another. And that is where you'll start to grow. And before you know it, you might find you're the AI expert in your school by just starting with that one simple tool. So lots of nice feedback for you there, Andrew. How did you find putting that together? Because I know it's been a busy couple of days for you, but how did you find working on that?
Yeah, honestly, I found it really interesting. I was very conscious that I hope someone in the future